Hey, Nyako here. Welcome to OB Studios. If you watched any of my last two videos, you know how much love I have shown to CSS Grid and the grid builder within Cwicly. And by no mistake, Grid is one powerful tool that if you are ever building a website, you should at least try it for once. And by saying that, someone might think that I am talking bad on another form of layout called Flexbox. And don't get it twisted. Flexbox is a really powerful layout system that you can also use, or layout option that you can use that can also change. Like if let's say you do have only Flexbox in your own builder, or if you're only familiar with Flexbox and you're not really into Grid and you want to see the power that is within Flexbox, watch this video, because in this video I'm going to take you through some of the things that you can use, or some of the options within Flexbox that you might not have used before, that I will encourage you to try it out if you are using Flexbox. So let's get into a builder I have Cwicly installed, and we are going to use the Flexbox option that is within Cwicly to do some. I'm just going to take you through it so that you understand like how good Flexbox is. Like, irrespective of how great CSS Grid is, Flexbox can do you one hell of a good. Okay, so we are in here in our builder. Let me take out this. So what I am going to do first is to add a section. So let's pop in a section, and then I'm going to delete the paragraph. So within our section, the first thing that I am going to do, from the beginning of my site, what I have done is I have set up that all my sections are 100% width or 100 VW. So I don't really have to set that. But what I am going to do now is to go into my margin and padding. And for the padding, I want to give this one 90 pixels all around. So I have a section with 90 pixels padding for all the sides. So that is good. All right. After that, let's go into layout, because layout is where our flex option is when it comes to Cwicly. So within layout, we are going to toggle flex. And when you choose flex, there are other options over here that you can go through. There is direction, there's children, there's alignment, there's justification, there's self-align, there's row gap, there's column gap, there's grow, there's shrink, and there's basis, and then there's something called other. Everything over here does something specific, and for us to be able to really understand what they do, we are going to add a few things into our build, into our section, so that we will understand how these properties over here affect things that are within this flex section. Okay, so within this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some divs. So div number 1, so one div is inside, div number 2, and then div number 3. Let's pull everything out. Pull div number 2 also out over here. All right, so we have one section which has 3 divs. So these 3 divs, to make sure that we can see our div, I am going to go into size, and here I'm going to give this one, let's say 650. The next one also has 650, and then the last but not the least also has 650. All right, so this is what we have. And inside back over here, let's give it a height of 120. This also a height of 120, and then this one a height of 120 pixels. And then I'm going to go into background so that we can really see what we're doing. Give this one a background of that. Click on this, give this one a different background. Let's push this one to I don't like that color, and then give this one also a background of something else. All right, that is good. You know, I'm from what you call it, I'm going to make it just to make sure that, yeah, make this a better color. This is useless, but I'm making sure that my colors are the colors that I want. All right, so this is good. And And then with this, the background, let's keep it like not too black, but something around here. And that is good. So we have our layout, we have our section. Our section has 3 divs, and every div has 650 pixel width. All right, let's save that. And then we're going to go into our front end and then refresh this. So this is what we see. Consider this div is skewed to the left. All right, so if you want to make sure that the div is skewed to the center, our section is selected. And then in the layout over here, we do have direction. In the default section, you can see that the direction is more on a row. So you can see that the red, the yellow, and the green are stacked against each other. So that is in a row form in one column. So when we click row, nothing should happen because that is a default behavior of the section. The next thing on it is a column. So you can stack it on top of each other by choosing a column. The next thing to it is a reverse, let's say reverse column. If we choose row, you can have a reverse row. If you choose column, you can have a reverse column. So that is what these 3 things they do. So if you really want to use reverse, you can do that. But mostly what people do is that they either choose row or they choose column. So depending on what you're doing, you choose one of these. So everything over here applies to the children within the section. So everything that you're doing that affects this section is affecting the children within. That is when it comes to Flexbox. The next thing that we have is called children. And the children, one thing over here that you can see is nowrap. When you click on nowrap, nothing happens because that is the default state of the section. Everything within the section the section itself doesn't have a wrap, or it is not wrapping the children within itself. So nothing is happening. When you pick wrap, something just happened. What happened? So what has happened is that this div is, what is the size again? This div is 650, but then the size of the section is a little bit smaller. So 650 plus 650 is giving us approximately, not approximately, but 650 by 650 time plus 650 is 1300. And it looks like our section right now is less than 1300, or the space available for these divs is less than 1300. So when we chose wrap, this div came all the way to the bottom, because now we are telling it that if the size of the section is smaller than the things, or the width of the section is smaller than the things that are within the section, make sure that the items start stacking on top of each other. And that is what we are telling the section to do using the flex properties. So now this is wrapping because the size of our section over here is smaller. But let's go into the front end and refresh. So we have refreshed, but nothing has happened. Why? Because my screen size is big enough to hold all 3 items. So if your screen size is not big enough, then this one is going to wrap, meaning it's going to move to the next column or the next row, which is what we are looking for. The next thing that you do have is wrap reverse. So just like reverse like that, so you can also have like wrap reverse and other stuff like that. So if you want to do wrap reverse, you can choose this, but then we can do wrap and then you can go over there. Let's take out wrap. The next thing on this specific on this section for the Flexbox is alignment. For us to do this, I am going to click, our section is still selected. I'm going to go into size, and then I'm going to change the height to, let's say, 750. All right, that is good. Let's go back into the layout, and within the layout, what we are going to do is we are going to try and do alignment. So we are going to align everything that is within the section. We're still in a row direction. So when we align this to the top, nothing happens. Why? because the default state of this section is tab, or what they call flex start. So it goes to the starting of the section. We can also do center. When you align it to the center, it moves it into the center of your section, depending on the available size that you have. The next thing that you have over here is flex end. Flex end means take it to the bottom. So when we click on it, this one takes everything that is within the section into the bottom. The next thing that you do have is stretch. If this div didn't have, let's say, a height, it would have stretched everything from top to the bottom. So if, let's say, I go in and then I go into the size and I remove it, I can see that now this div has been stretched. So every item that is within this section will stretch if the section has an alignment of stretch. And then you can also have a baseline. Baseline mostly is going to put it on the baseline of the section. But let's make sure we go back into, let's put this onto the top, right? And then go back to the div, and then this one is 120. So we are still in uniform. All right, so that is good. Let's go back into the layout. So we've talked about alignment. Now let's talk about justification. All right, so for justification, we might have to do a few things. So let's try justify to, let's take this, right? And we are going to reduce the size to, let's say, 250. This one to 250. And then this one, another 250. All right, that is good. And then we go back into our section, go into layout. So for justification, you're going to see when I start clicking on the option, we have justify or flex start, another justification. When I click on it, nothing happens because that is the default state of the section. When I click on center, it moves everything into the center. So everything that is within the section. So let's say if we combine center alignment and then the center justified, then you mean that everything will come to the very center of the section. Let's leave alignment to the top. And then in the justification, we can also do justify to the end, where it moves every item within the section to the end. So it will start from the end and then it will start going to the left. Then you also have space in between, where the space between each item is the same. If we had more items, every space between 1, 2, 3 is going to be the same. Let's delete this. And then last but not the least, we do have space round. So the space between here to here, the same space between here to the very center, and then from the center to here. So that is space around. So that is pretty good. So now we've talked about justification or justifying items, aligning them, talk about direction, children, and all those other nice stuff. We can go back into, let's say, direction and then do columns, right? And then we can undo all of this and see what happens. So now when you do justification, when you do your direction and makes it a column, a lot of things switch around. So now in alignments now will put this into the center. When we were in a row and we chose alignment to center, it brought it down. But when you are in a column and you choose alignment, it pushes it into the center. And if you want this to come down so that everything will be in the very center, you have to go into justification and justify it to come into the center. So columns and rows, they switch around the alignment and justification properties. So that is what you should understand. Then you can push it to the right, you can stretch it. When you stretch it, let's say, when you stretch and unless we take the width away, then remember when we stretched and we took the height away, the width. But in columns, when you stretch, you take the width away so that it will stretch the item that you want it to stretch. Then you can give it, let's say, you don't have to give it anything, but then let's go back and give, I think this is 1250. All right, that is good. So let's go back into our section. go into layout. So in this layout, I hope you understand all these alignment justification stuff. The next thing, we're going to make this one into a row again. So next thing that we are going to do is to talk about self alignment or align self. Align self sounds self-explanatory, or it explains itself. Self alignment talks about you aligning yourself. So for us to demonstrate this, I'm going to click on the first div. Let's call this div A. So I'm going to click on div A, right? And I'm going to show you how self-alignment works. So let's say div A has been selected. And then we want div A to come to the bottom. If you want it to come to the bottom, you might think that, okay, then let's go into section and then align it to the bottom. But then this one wouldn't align. Or then probably you might want to use margins. But margins, really? You really want to use margin like push all the way to the top? It's not going to be intuitive. You might be doing too much work. That is why when it comes to Flexbox, go back into the section and then let's put this to the top, right? And then choose div A. We can align div A to the bottom by just making sure that we choose align self end. So it will push div A all the way to the bottom. We can also, let's call this one div C, right? So div C, we want this div C to align itself to the center. So now div C is in the center. And then we can say, let's call this one div B. Then we want also div B to stay where it is, or we can just say align to the start. So now all these items have now aligned themselves how they want. So every item within the Flexbox can align itself the way that it wants to align itself. You don't really have to do much. So let's go into the front end and see how this is looking like. So this is what we have. If let's say we try to make it responsive, what happens? You can squeeze it around like this, and then as you can see, it becomes smaller. So that is what the alignment, or that is how the alignment it works. You can align items based on where, or you can align items where you want it to be at, whether you want it to be at the top, in the middle. You can also stretch it if you want it to stretch all the way. You understand? So if let's say you want to stretch just one item, you don't want to stretch the entire item. Let's say div A, we can click on stretch. And then when you click on stretch, it will move it to the top. But because we have attached a height to it, that's why it's not working. So when we check out the height, then it works now. So let's put back our height because we need it. Okay, back into our section, and in our layout, then in our section, the next thing on the chopping board, I'm going to remove this. Everything is at the top. Make sure also remove this, and that is good. All right, back in our section, we are going to deal with row gaps and column gaps. So let's say we give this one 20. Nothing is happening. Why is it that nothing is happening? Because we have only one row. We don't have more than one row. We have only one row. But when I give it a column gap, then we have like more than one column, like column number 1, number 2, number 3. But we have only one row. So then we can have like space down here. But let's say we change our direction to column. Then we have just one column, but 3 rows. So then because we have more than one row, then the space for the row gap works. So let's go back into our direction. So that's how you apply your rows and other stuff like that if you want to apply row gaps and then column gaps. So that is pretty good. But we are getting to the fun stuff. The last part of the video, we are going to look at these 4 things below here: grow, shrink, basis, and other. Those are some of the fun parts when it comes to using Flexbox as a layout option. Okay, so to demonstrate this, let's go back into our divs, our A, B, C, and our A, B, and C divs. Let's look at what Flex Grow would do. Let's select div A, and then we are going to go into our size, and then we are going to give this 100 width. We're going to go to B, also give this 100 width, and then we're going to go to C, Okay, instead of 100, I want to do 250, right? Okay, maybe 100 is okay. Right, so everything has 100 width on them. And then in the back over here, when I go back into layout in on div C, we're going to give it a grow of 1. All right, so let's save this. So when I add 1 to div C, what you can see that all of a sudden it has grew to cover the entire space available in the main section, which is this main section. The main section is 1440, and this div is 100 pixels. This div is 100 pixels. Now this div is also 100 pixels, but then I have told it to grow 1. So what does growing 1 means at this time? I'm going to use the analogy of having a cake. Let's say we have a cake and I have to share the cake amongst myself, meaning that even if I divide the cake by, let's say, let me change this to 500. Even if I divide the cake by 500, I'm still going to have the whole cake to myself because I am the only person who is taking the entire cake. So whether the cake is 500, 600, 700, or has been divided into a million pieces of cake, I'm still going to have everything that is in that million because I'm only by myself. So I'm going to go back over here and then change this one to, let's say, a 3, right? Still nothing happens. But then let me go into B and then change this one to a 2 and then change A to a 1. Now A has become the new 1, but it is now very small. Why is that very small? We're going to use the same analogy of a cake. Cake B has taken 2. Cake C has taken 3. And cake, not cake. Let's start again. Div A has taken 1. Div B has taken 2. And div C has taken 3. So if, let's say, we have one full cake and we divide the whole cake into 6 pieces, div 1 has taken 1/6 of it. Div 2 has taken 1/3 of it, or yeah, let's say 2/6 of it. And then div C has taken what? 3/6 of it, which is half of the cake. So that is what grow does to your element. If you give all your element a specific grow, they are going to share the portion that is left, because the portion that was left over here was 100 pixels, 100 pixels, 100 pixels, 300 pixels. The main div has 440 pixels, so it will be left with what? 1140 pixels. So that 1140 pixels is being shared into, is being divided into 6 and being shared to everybody that is within that main section. So that is what is happening when it comes to grow. So what grow does is it grows your element or your item to the point that you have satisfied, that you have the point that you have indicated. So if you have indicated a 1 and the div or the element is the only item that has a grow value, the rest of the items are not going to grow, as we saw from the beginning. So this has a 1, this has a 2, and then this has a 3. So that is what grow is. So we have combined width and grow. If we go in and we remove the width, right, a width of 100, if we remove everything, we go here and remove everything, it is still working. But now, instead of everything starting at 100, now everything is starting from a 0, and within that 1440 is being divided into 6, and this one is taking 3/6 of it, or half of the 1440, and these two are sharing the rest, with this taking 2/6, and then also this one taking 1/6 of it. So that is what is happening. That is what grow does to your element. Now let's go back into div A and let's go over here. Now what we are going to do is tackle shrink. But before we tackle shrink, I am going to remove the grow. Remove the grow. and then also remove the grown. Right, so now you can see that none of this doesn't have a width. It also doesn't have what? A grown. We are going to give it a width in a different way. We are going to use flex basis to give it a width. And I'm going to show you the difference between flex basis width and then the normal width. So let's say div A has a flex basis of 350. All right. Div B has a flex basis of 250. And then div C has a width of 250. All right, that is good. So within div A, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, let me give it like a bit of spacing. Let's give it like 10 pixels and then click over here to, and then 10 pixels for padding. All right, in here, I'm going to add a paragraph and I'm going to add text. Click over here, also add, let's duplicate this paragraph and then just put it over here, right? This is what we want. Let's make sure that instead of 250, let's make it, let's say, no, 250 is okay. So within this paragraph, we are going to give it, so the paragraph, you selected the paragraph and then we are in the sizing of the paragraph. We want to give this paragraph a width of, let's say 450. And then we're going to come into this paragraph, give it a width of 450. Let's save that. Let's click on the main section, go into color. I'm just going to change the color for visibility purposes. Okay, and then let's save it. And then let's refresh over here. Okay, so remember, the middle one, which is div B, has a flex basis of 350. Div C has a width of 350. Div B is not overflowing, but div C is overflowing. The text that's supposed to be in this div is overflowing. If I go back and then over here, I go to layout for div C, layout, I go to visual, and overflow I do hidden. Now you can see that the overflow is hidden, right? Let's remove it again so that we can see the overflow in it. Because right now I'm trying to show you the difference between flex basis and width. Both of them do the same kind of thing. They both give your element a width. But then the implementation is a bit different, because with flex basis, what happens is the width of the element, the width of the things inside it determines the width that it is going to take. So as you saw, the width of div B is 350, but the element inside was around 400 or 500. Let's go back so I can see the size. So go into size. Okay, so the size is 450, but the basis for this div is 350. Let me go into here. Yeah, it's 250. So now I've added an extra 200 pixels to it by making sure that the paragraph that is within it is more than that. And when the item within that div is more than that, instead of overflowing, it is going to stretch itself. So that is what flex basis will do to your element. So if you have a div and you set the base of the div to, let's say, 100, it is going to start at 100. And for us, we have set the base for our div to 250. So it started at 250. But the elements that we place inside the div is 450. So now, because we are not using width and we are using the flex basis method, now our div is going to expand to hold the items inside. So you can look at flex basis and the normal width as the normal width is more of a permanent width. You cannot do anything to stretch it unless you go inside and stretch it yourself. But with flex bases, you are just setting a base width for the flex base to work. And when you have set a base width and the element inside is bigger than the base that you have set, your base or your item or your div is going to expand to accommodate the element. One more thing that you want to know about flex bases is when we go back into our section, right? And then we go into flex, into our layout, and then we choose flex. Right now we are in the row. When we choose column, flex bases changes. Flex bases is a width when we choose row, but it's a height when we choose columns. I hope you understand. So let's try and demonstrate that over here. So let's say this text, right? I am going to back over here, and I'm going to change this one to, let's say, 50 pixels, and then let's save it. And then I'm going to remove this, right? Oh no, 50 pixels, that's good. I'm going to select this one, and then the text, I'm going to remove the width, and then I am going to set a height of, let's say, 50, and then I save it. So the same thing that was happening when we were using the row direction, now that we've changed the main section from a row to a column, and we have set a flex base on this, so this one has a flex base of what? 250 pixels. But then the item inside, let's go to the front end, and let's inspect the item. But the item inside is what? 432 pixels. So our div has now adjusted its height to accommodate how big the element will be. I hope this makes sense. So that is the major difference between using flex bases and then using width or height. So if you think that what you are going to put into your element might be too big, and you want to make sure that it expands to a certain height or a certain width, then you have to use flex bases. Understand? You have to use flex bases. You can also combine flex bases and growth. So let's go back into our section and then change this on to direction. All right, so over here, I am going to, we can leave this just like that. So we are going to just combine, let's say, grow to our flex. We're going to combine with our flex bases. I'm going to go here. All right, so div 1, and let's go to layout, and then on grow, let's give it 1. Go back over here, on grow, give it a 2, and then on grow, give it a 3. So remember that the size on this, let's give this one, let's say 450, right? So we can start from here. Then we can refresh. Then we can squeeze. It is still overflowing. If we have to fix this, this overflow, we have to go into our section, and then we have to make sure that the max is 100% at all times. And then we can just refresh again. Then we can squeeze it. But you can see that this that we have set, because we have this at a very specific width, it is still causing an overflow, even though our innermost item is now at a maximum of 100%, but this one is still causing a problem of an overflow. If we have to fix it, one way that we can do it is that, so let's select this. You can then give this one maximum width of 100%. When it comes to the front, and then you refresh, then it will stick inside when the size is now small. So that is that is one of the ways to deal with, let's say, or one of the ways when it comes to flex bases and then width. And you can combine it with flex grow and other stuff like that. But then not the last one, but we do have flex shrink. So let's go back into our div, right? We're going to remove grow, and then we're going to tell it to shrink at a 1. Go over here, remove grow, and then tell this one to shrink at a 2. Go here and remove grow, and then tell this one to shrink at a 3. Let's remove this grow and give this a flex basis. Let's say 500. Give this one a flex basis of 500. Then give this one a flex basis of also 500. All right. Okay. There's 1, this is 2, and then this is 3. That. Let's refresh it. All right. So I've added shrink to our element, right? So now I am changing the viewport of my, let's say, of my device. So when I start squeezing, right? See, when I start squeezing, number 1 and div 3 and div 2 are now shrinking, but div 1 is still staying the same. It's not shrinking as much as div 2 and then div 3. Why? Because all these 3 divs, they have a different shrink rate. You are telling div 3 to shrink 3 times faster than div 1. You are telling div 2 to shrink 2 times faster than div 1. And you are telling div 1 to shrink just at a normal rate. So when you start squeezing, you can see that things are shrinking at a different way. The reason why this is not going all the way is because we do have a width applied to it. So we can remove the width and then we can save it. Then we can refresh. Then we can start squeezing. Let's make sure we do have 500, 3, 500, 100. Okay, 500, 100. We can also make sure that this doesn't have a definite width to it too. All right, let's save this as, and we can, and when it starts shrinking, this starts shrinking really fast, and then this one shrinks, and this one shrinks just like that. So that is how it works when it comes to using shrink. The rate at which you indicate, you can see that the last one shrunk away because it doesn't have any element inside. If it had an element inside, then it wouldn't shrink all the way to 0. So that is why they're shrinking. But what I really wanted you to see is that the last 2 divs are shrinking much faster than the first div. They are shrinking really fast at a faster rate than div 1. So that is that when it comes to using grow, shrink, and basis. I hope this was clear. The last one, but not the least, is to deal with order. So order comes into play when you want to change the position of an item or an element that is within a flex container. So we have our main section, which is a flex container, and then we have these divs, which are flex items. So we want this, we want div C to be number 1 when we go on tablet mode. So we're going to go into tablet mode, and then when I click on div C, I want to give it an order of 1, and then I want div 1 to be an order of 2, and I want div 2 to be an order of 3. So this is what happens. So when we go into the front end and we refresh, you can see that this is our layout. But when we start getting to around 900, things are going to swap. So things have swapped all the way around, and now this is what we have. So this is what order does. Order lets you reorder items on different breakpoints. So whether it is on mobile or it is on desktop or it is on your tablet, you'll be able to change the position of an item based on the order that you give it. All right, so this is more like the basis of Flexbox if you want to use Flexbox for your design, because whether you like it or not, even if you use Grid, you have to come back to Flexbox for some of the things that you do need. for some of the elements that you do need, especially when it comes to using Cwicly. In the next video that I do, I'm going to combine Cwicly's grid and also the Flexbox so they can see that whether you like it or not, even though grid is pretty awesome, you still need Flexbox to arrange some of your items that is within your grid column. All right, so I hope this was informative. We talked about the main section, the direction, the children, justification, alignment. Talked about column gap. We talked about row gap. We talked about flex grow, flex shrink, and then we also talked about flex spaces. And lastly, we talked about how to order your items and also the difference between the width and then flex spaces. So I hope you're going to take something from this and apply it in your own design. And I'm going to add chapters to the video so that you'll be able to move around as you want. The name is Nyako. This is OB Studios. Hope you learned something. See you on the next one.